ADHD Rewired, episode 458. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host, and I have ADHD. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection, and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free and secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups. Learn all about our award-winning coaching and accountability groups. You can co-work with us in our Adult Study Hall virtual membership community. You can do all of these things by going to our website at ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. Today's guest is Rahti Gorfien. Rahti has coached independent creative professionals such as actors, writers, artists, filmmakers, and tech developers who are scattered and overwhelmed. She helps her clients break the cycle of isolation, irregular income, and irregular hours by taking a more structured and entrepreneurial approach to their careers based on their unique strengths and neurological makeup. How's it going, Rahti?
Yay!
Thanks for being here.
Oh, it's going well. It's going well. I'm very excited to be here.
We're going to talk today about the 5 emotions that stop success. But before we kind of dive into that, I would love for you to share some of your story, including the part where you were the only person that you know who was ever kicked out of a cult.
Okay, you got it. All right. Well, I started out as a theater artist. In fact, I have an image of myself at 4 years of age on a rocking horse, fantasizing, waving to a crowd. And that was when I knew I had to be some sort of performer. Fast forward, I had my nose pressed up against the glass of Yale Drama School because I grew up in New Haven, although my parents had nothing to do with Yale, so I was a townie, but I wanted in. And during that time, Meryl Streep was enrolled there, and I created a position for myself called Company Apprentice of the Summer Cabaret Theater. And it had never existed before. As the artistic director told his wife, she's really pushy. But then he said, I've heard through the grapevine that he thought pushy was good. And so I would clean urinals and cut cheesecake. After washing my hands, after cleaning, they imported Junior's cheesecake and I gained 12 pounds, that summer. They took me off cheesecake duty at a certain point because I was eating leftover cheesecake off people's plates. But we digress. Anyway, I would get these small bit parts, and probably the worst, but the most impactful was when I played a corpse under the couch of Tom Stoppard's The Real Inspector Hound. I had big army boots on. I was 16. I was the best fucking corpse, man. I did not breathe for 45 minutes. It was like David Blaine. You couldn't tell I was alive. Meanwhile, Meryl Streep was the lead, and she was in this gold lame gown, flouncing back and forth over my legs. And when I went up to my dad afterwards and asked him what he thought, he said, "That blonde gal's gonna make it." Now, of course, I needed to hear him say, "You were the best corpse." I can't believe how committed and brilliant you were as a corpse and how wonderful, You mean
he didn't say you were drop dead gorgeous?
No, he didn't. Drop dead gorgeous. Boom. But, the message I took away from that, and also I will be transparent as I'm inspired to be by your podcast. I was undiagnosed bipolar, and it was all or nothing with me, which is why I was so successfully pushy. I decided I had to be Meryl Streep. And so I descended upon my acting career with that in mind, that if I wasn't Meryl Streep, I was nobody. Little all or nothing thinking.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't go that way. And after a devastating period of being in bed for several days, a friend took me up to a retreat at this ashram.
And
it was
explain
like
what an
lightning.
ashram is for people that don't know.
An ashram, I like to say it's like a Hindu kibbutz.
And a kibbutz is, for people that don't know.
I'm so provincial because
it's
I'm
like
a
we're
New
two
Yorker.
Jews here talking,
I'm a
but
New York Jew. Yeah, a kibbutz in Israel is a community. It's a communal living style. People farm their own food. I don't know a lot about kibbutz living. However, a lot of people go to live on a kibbutz at a certain point in their life. It's kind of like joining the army, I guess. And I realized I needed something more. I was going to go off the deep end permanently. And I moved into this ashram because I fell in love with the guru. I laid eyes on him. And this is just a real thing that happens. I really do believe there's an energetic exchange. And I was literally pulled there, to my parents' terror and chagrin. All went well for the first year, and then things started to go south because my vision started to diverge from the guru's vision, which was really about selfless service, ultimately to him. And it was also a celibate community. It was also, they didn't acknowledge if people were gay, right? It was just really... it was really small. It was a very limiting existence. But at the same time, I had some epiphanic spiritual moments in meditation, and there was a lot of good there. But I also felt I needed to get back and be an actor and be on stage. So because there were no outlets expression-wise, except for food.
And cheesecake. That was later.
Yeah, food. I was stationed to work in the kitchen. Things started happening. I would get in fights with people. I emptied a bucket of zucchini on a sister's head. I came to blows, fisticuffs one time with someone. And the guru said to me, "I think you should take a leave of absence for a while," which, of course, he had never, to my knowledge, said to anyone. I left it. And I was very grateful because a few years later, scandal erupted and he was kicked out. And I mean, the waves of trauma affected everyone who had ever lived there. It certainly affected me and nearly tore my marriage apart. But that
So
was the story.
How old were you when you were there?
I moved in, it was 1980. So, so I was 20. I guess I was there for almost 3 years.
And you were married?
No, I came back to New York, and this is where the coaching started to happen, because one thing I took away from the shram, as we called it, was that company is stronger than will. And I realized I was trying to do it alone.
Say more about that.
Yes. I started forming groups around myself. I started reading Barbara Sher's Witchcraft. Barbara Sher, as you probably know, is ADHD. And
actually, I don't know who that is.
Barbara Sher, I consider the mother of coaching, and she was a social worker who wrote a book called Wishcraft, not witchcraft, Wishcraft. And she talks a lot about teams and not relying on intrinsic motivation. In other words, don't wait to feel like it. And so I started creating teams and started gaining some success. And I started doing stand-up comedy because back then, if you couldn't sing like Barbra Streisand, a way in as an actor was stand-up. We had Ray Romano and all these people broke through, Seinfeld. And I met my husband doing the comedy circuit. In fact, we worked together. We had a show we did together. We worked on the road together. And he started noticing that I was really good at this team group thing. And people got results. Like I have a good friend who was an elementary school teacher, and she ended up opening a bookstore on Lexington Avenue. That was her dream. I had another friend who wanted to become a DJ. She did. I started a beautiful little yoga practice. I also started a little cooking thing because I was able to cook macrobiotic food. So I was able to support myself using my ashram skills. And he said, "You should start charging." This is my husband. He said, "You should start charging for these teams." And I didn't know what I was doing.
You're just kind of going on instinct and intuition.
So, but then again, I knew a lot of people. A lot of people in show business are into Landmark. And Landmark, I think, was where Thomas Leonard came out of, and the whole coaching culture came out of. And so I discovered there was this thing called life coaching. And I realized that essentially that's what I was doing with people. And I decided, I put a shingle out in 2003 and I kept having to backpedal because I would get involved with clients who I couldn't handle and I would send them to shrinks. So I decided it was time to take a course. And as I didn't mention, my husband has ADHD. We eventually adopted, and my son has ADHD. And it explained a lot. I remember when we first got engaged, my husband set a bench outside my father's house on fire because he was trying to cook something.
Not because he was getting revenge of some kind.
No, it's because he got distracted and he let something go directly on the wood that should have been there. And my father pulled me aside and he said, "You gotta watch him." He said, my father loved my husband, but he always used to think of him as a creative, absent-minded professor. And that was his perception of my husband's ADHD.
So your husband has ADHD, your son has ADHD.
Yeah.
There's other ADHD in your family.
Yeah, a very close relative of mine, which I didn't even know till my mother died, was diagnosed when we were both kids with ADHD. I managed to pass, I think, and so it never became a thing where I needed to go get diagnosed. And, I did get diagnosed with bipolar.
And how long ago was that?
That was 2005.
So up to this point, I think
bipolar 2, by the way, not like, I think there are different gradations of bipolar, right?
When I was in my studying for my clinical examination for my licensure, my memory strategy for remembering the difference between 1 and 2 is bipolar 1 is fun and 2 is blue.
You got it. 2 is blue, but then there are moments of fun and buzz where you feel invincible still too. And those are the moments when I would blow my life up.
Yeah, and it probably feels like you're on top of the world. So you kind of look back and like, oh crap.
Well, then you make some choice.
So through all of this, while you said you feel you might have ADHD, you've actually never been formally diagnosed.
No, never been formally diagnosed,
and
but God
64.
knows if I look back, I know I had the that's also why acting didn't work out. I definitely had the rejection sensitive dysphoria.
It's interesting. We've talked about that on the podcast, and I would actually, I got to reach out to William Dotson because I would love to have a conversation with him about that. He's the guy who created that term. Because I think that the idea of rejection sensitivity as a descriptor of an experience makes a lot of sense.
I don't get what the dysphoria part means, really. You had me at rejection sensitive.
I think the idea is that it's a feeling that is sort of prolonged and sort of sticks around. And
yes,
I just think it's interesting, it's I think important that when we're talking about like whatever, even if we don't like the name of the thing, right?
Yeah.
I think it's important that we're all using the same language, so we're all talking about the same things. Because you have some people who will say like, oh, there's these 6 or 7 subtypes of ADHD. I'm like, maybe interesting observation, but from a research standpoint, like that's, I think, dangerous because you could be talking about other actual diagnoses.
Yes, that's true. So what's your issue with dysphoria?
If the key piece is rejection, then how do you distinguish between that and borderline personality disorder, which the key triggering feature is rejection?
Oh, wow. Okay. I didn't know that. Yeah. That's really interesting.
Yeah. So, not to minimize the experience of it, because I think it's one of these things, and I think why it's sort of caught on as a thing that it is because I think so many people in the ADHD community really identify with that, right? And I think so there's something to that, right? I just think it's important as a consumer and educator of mental health related issues that we are being smart sort of consumer scientists and that we are speaking about the same thing, and that like when we say this research on this, like what are we actually saying? Like, was there a single case study that was done? Because to me, that's just an interesting documentation of a process. To me, that's not research that I will base practice on.
Right. And in terms of basing practice on it, as you might agree, I mean, as coaches, we're not diagnosticians. I mean, I help people with the traits of ADHD. And that was what drew me to getting certified as an ADHD coach. I figured if I could coach someone with ADHD, I could coach anyone and I won't kill my husband. That was the thing. And that's also why I don't feel like I have to have it to empathize with it or know that I have it to empathize with it, because I do have the traits. I get what it is to be a pack rat and, time blindness and all of it,
And I can imagine too that even just your experience of living with bipolar disorder, like you understand what it's like to have your brain not cooperate with you.
Oh my God, exactly. We say brain, mind, and emotions. I don't know how you feel about it. That's where the whole 5 emotions thing came out of, because I think emotions are really the lighthouse. They are the harbinger of belief. Or I don't know if that's because I was going to say belief. We'll get back to it.
We will get back to it. That's a perfect cue for our transition to take a really quick break. When we come back, we are going to talk about the 5 emotions that stop success. So we will be right back. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from our coaching community at coachingrewired.com. We've had over 950 adults with ADHD go through our award-winning 10-week coaching program. At 4 seasons per year with multiple groups per season, one thing is for certain. With the right tools and the right support, with people who understand the struggles we face, we can do hard things, and we don't have to do them the hardest way possible. Registration for our next season of our award-winning coaching and accountability groups is happening now. Go to coachingrewired.com to start your pre-registration process so you can join us for one of 2 registration events we have coming up this week on Thursday, December 8th and Saturday, December 10th.
I came into group a really tough cookie. I think I was skeptical and cynical and did not believe in things like you can do hard things.
I had decided to join the group because even though I had made a lot of progress with individual therapy and my own self-work, I just felt like my growth was plateauing. And I really just wanted to try something like drastically different from everything that I had tried before.
When this coaching group came up, I had just moved out of my house. I was a mess, like a hot mess.
Prior to this group, my definition of success definitely had a lot to do with how other people perceived things I was doing or had done.
It's just such a relief to know that you're not alone, that you might not think like everybody around you, but you certainly think like a bunch of people that are in the world.
I've learned that I don't need anybody else to define what successful means to me, and that I am pretty darn successful on a daily basis.
When I think of success, I now focus on what is kind, compassionate, and possible. I try not to think about what I should or should have done or what people expect of me, and instead try to think of what I really want and what I think I'm capable of.
I learned so much about myself and discovered what's good about me in ways that I wouldn't have alone and that I didn't with a therapist, and broke through that cynicism.
If you are thinking about joining this group, I'd highly encourage it. There was something amazingly special about growing with a group of people who all had similar struggles as I did.
Yes, life with ADHD has its challenges, and it can feel like we are living on hard mode. We also know that because there's no one-size-fits-all approach to managing our ADHD, when you join ADHD Rewired's coaching and accountability groups, not only will you have a shame-free and judgment-free space to experience all the different tools and tips that we share, but you'll also have a community behind you to cheer you on, because we can do hard things and we don't have to do them alone. So go to coachingrewired.com to get your name added to our interest list and start your pre-registration process so you can receive your invitation to join us for our next winter registration event this week, Thursday, December 8th and Saturday, December 10th. And if you are hearing this after that, go to the website to find out when our next registration event is. That's coachingrewired.com. We can't wait to meet you. And we are back. All right. So during the break, T figured out what she was trying to say at the end before we transitioned to break. What was it? It was thoughts and emotions.
Yes. Emotions are the harbingers of what we think, of what we believe. And so we have to tend to them because they're the wrapping, they're the gift wrapping. What I have found through my work as a coach and through 15 years of psychoanalysis, I've identified what I believe are the 5 core emotions that make us miserable, especially as creatives. And I suspect as neurodivergent people, those are shame, envy, grandiosity, boredom, and fear.
How'd you come up with this? Like, do you remember the origin of this idea?
Well, yes, through my life experience, when I would blow up my life, the shame, there was a cycle of shame and grandiosity that would happen.
I can definitely see how those two could be connected.
Yeah. So I think grandiosity is just the flip side of shame.
I think it could be really easy to relate to as well. Just thinking about the time where we maybe had a few too many to drink.
Yeah.
While we were drinking, we thought we were amazing and had so much fun, and we're like, it brought out our extroverted selves if we're introverted. And then, the next day we're like, oh crap, I made a fool out of myself.
Oh yeah, right. What is that again? Vulnerability hangover, Brene Brown calls it.
That's right. But you got to have a fair sense of self-awareness too, though, to even have that sense of shame.
Well, it took a lifetime. I believe that if we're going to get rid of stigmas, we have to be transparent about what we are, who we are. So I'm 64 and F all who knows it, and I'm talking about my neurodiversity. It took my life experience to have that awareness. And actually, there was a key moment in therapy that became very valuable and allowed me to discern these different emotions and how they were messing around with me and my clients.
What was that?
Well, I had a dream that I was sitting in the mezzanine of a big Broadway theater with the red curtains, right? And down on the stage, and the house lights were black, down on the stage, I was being dragged around by my hair, which is something that happened in my childhood during a big family melee. It was a very violent, emotionally, physically, it was not happy. But I was calm watching it. And my therapist said to me, that's it. You are the woman in the mezzanine. That's who you are. And that became, a recurring theme. That idea of separation between how you feel and who you are. That, I think, distinguishes victim mentality and seeing everything as a problem, including oneself.
Well, that's shame right there.
That's shame. And shame, of course, is the mother of all. It's the base. It's the foundation. That is shame. I think victim mentality and shame, that's part of the definition of a victim mentality, in my opinion. I am bad. Nothing can get better. I can't get better. I can't.
I mean, when I think about that sort of interconnection between victim mentality and shame, the only thing that comes to mind is trauma. Like, how is that not like the result of trauma?
It is trauma. I think, definitely that my trauma, I'm grateful for it now in retrospect, because it gave me what I like to call an understanding of despair. That's a kind of experience that allows you to empathize with all kinds of neurodivergent pain and, difference pain, the pain of being other. So, yes, I do come out of a background of trauma. And it's funny because I've coached torture survivors. The people I've worked with, I like to say their hearts have been broken. That's one of their criteria for becoming a client. They have been broken in some way by life.
Are you familiar with the Brene Brown manifesto of the brave and brokenhearted?
It sounds vaguely familiar, but I don't think I necessarily am.
Because part of what you said, we talk about this in our coaching groups when we're talking about numbing versus self-care. I'd love to read it.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So this is from Brene Brown's The Manifesto of the Brave and Brokenhearted. It is available on Google. There is no greater threat to the critics and cynics and fearmongers than those of us who are willing to fall because we have learned how to rise. With skinned knees and bruised hearts, We choose owning our stories of struggle over hiding, over hustling, over pretending. When we deny our stories, they define us. When we run from struggle, we are never free. So we turn toward truth and look it in the eye. We will not be characters in our stories, not villains, not victims, not even heroes. We are the authors of our lives. We write our own daring endings. We craft love from heartbreak, compassion from shame, grace from disappointment, courage from failure. Showing up is our power. Story is our way home. Truth is our song. We are the brave and brokenhearted. We are rising strong.
I'm so glad you read that. That is so apropos. It's right. That rising, learning to rise. That's how you become the woman in the mezzanine or the man in the mezzanine.
In our groups, I like to use the sort of this metaphorical idea of putting on your rubber pants. Like, you're gonna fall. Put on those rubber pants that make you bounce back up. You don't need to kick yourself when you're down.
Took years to learn that one.
And I think that most people who really embody that idea have done a lot of work on themselves.
Yeah, so that's right. And I also have a component of my work that I do that's called mental fitness. It comes out of the positive psychology, which is very de rigueur right now. Shirzad Shamin's positive psychology. I find his training to be really effective and helpful as a tool in working with neurodivergent people, because it really helps you begin to make that separation. The seed of resilience is being able to separate from those hijackings, right?
The seed of resilience. Resilience is, say that again.
Oh, I hope I can. The seed of resilience is in being able to separate from our emotional hijackings, so that then if we can calm ourselves, we can access that prefrontal cortex and access our ability to navigate situations, right? But it takes pausing, that mighty pause.
Yes,
right?
That mindful awareness. Let's
the
look
mindful
at it without
awareness.
Judgment.
Yeah, that's what allows you to access that. I could be totally wrong about this, but I also think that mindfulness is what allows us to access more of our executive function.
Well, when we're not being flooded by overwhelming emotion.
Exactly.
Right?
Ergo, the 5 emotions, overwhelming emotions. And
before you get into that, I wanted to actually ask you. So I wanted to come back to this manifesto.
Sure.
So with your background in theater, and we have these conversations in our groups, and I've had these conversations in our team meetings with my coaches. There's this one paragraph here, one stanza that, and for me, it's actually it's one sentence in here that just kind of, I'm like, it's hard. That's that we will not be characters in our stories, not villains, not victims, not even heroes.
Wow.
The not even heroes part, I'm like, fuck that. Like, I feel like the shit that I do every day, that like when I'm pushing through and learning and challenging myself to do the things that I at one point in my life didn't think was even possible, I feel that's pretty fucking heroic, and I want a damn cave for it, right? So I have a hard time with that one.
I wonder if it isn't more about not grasping at being heroic.
Not
in
doing
terms
it
of,
for the sort of...
Yes. But also in Buddhism, we learn about how the nature of life is everything's impermanent. So you have a moment of being heroic. If you grasp at that as if you've got to hold on to it, you can't. And it's going to lead to the opposite.
That's an interesting perspective. It'd be wonderful to be able to get Brene on this podcast.
Oh, wouldn't it? Brene Brown. Anybody know Brene Brown? Absolutely.
I've had that call out on the end of my podcast for years, and it's
when the time is right.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, that's a really interesting perspective about not letting that thing itself be the goal.
Right. If you don't identify with when things aren't going well, It's kind of like your reviews. You can't believe the great reviews or the bad reviews.
So let's talk about emotions.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's the biggest shiny object of them all, isn't it? How you feel.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
emotions are also wise, and they're also convincing liars.
Oh, my goodness. Absolutely. And in the methodology I work in, they are called saboteurs, right? We all have different saboteurs that reside in our limbic system. So, the shame is very much a victim saboteur. And I'm not blaming the victim in saying that, but it comes out of a lot of trauma. People with a lot of trauma have a very powerful victim, helpless kind of saboteur thing going on. The grandiosity, I think it's interesting because grandiosity is also, in my opinion, what causes us to think that we are exceptional in some way. And that's very isolating.
What about the opposite, where, because I see this a lot, where people having a real difficult time even owning at all any part of their badassery.
Right?
And if you think about is owning your badassery, is that grandiose or is,
well, you might be held to it, kind of what we were just talking about. All of a sudden you'll have something to have to live up to. That's terrifying.
So if you push it away and dismiss it, then you don't have to expect it.
That's exactly right. And originally the title of the book was going to be It's Safe to Be Seen, because all of these negative emotions, the shame, grandiosity, envy, boredom, fear, they keep us from being seen. They allow us to hide. And of course, if you're not seen, you can't be seen to fail, right?
Now that idea of being seen, I think is it's part of why I am just in love with group and community work for ADHD, because it's I just think that is such a healing and powerful sort of asset that we can have in our lives.
Yeah.
That seeing ourselves in somebody else, seeing that they're doing well and then wanting nothing but kindness and compassion for that person when they're struggling, right? It's amazing how when we see, when we're struggling, man, we can beat the shit out of ourselves when we're struggling. But when somebody else is struggling and beating the shit out of themselves, they're like, man, why are they being so hard on themselves?
Isn't that interesting?
And I think that when we do this in community, we're like, oh shit, is that how hard I am on myself? Because that's uncomfortable to even hear when somebody else is saying that. And so I think when we can experience that and sort of be those mirrors for each other,
absolutely.
It's the thing about a group mirror is that there's typically, if it's a good group, a good community, the only thing that's not being reflected back is judgment, because we're typically used to looking at ourselves, judging ourselves, and nothing good comes out of that.
Never. Never.
Okay, so where does envy come from in terms of these
Well,
emotions?
envy comes also from the fundamental self-rejection of not being enough. Yeah, and I was envious of Meryl Streep. I couldn't even go see any movies that she was in for years. I just couldn't. Too painful. I'll tell you, I still don't go see Broadway shows.
Really?
It's too painful, too envious. Something I really wanted that didn't work out. And so I pay attention to what is working out. If I know someone in the show that's different in a weird way, I will see stuff I know someone in.
How does it feel when you do that?
Usually better than I expect. And also I tend to feel like, okay, this is my crew. I'm part of this. I understand what's going on stage and what the back end of this looks like for people. And I enjoy it like a connoisseur because I'm trained. I can watch a friend's performance and I know how to be supportive afterwards. So it's actually very gratifying when I get my butt into the theater.
So I know this wasn't part of the plan, but I wanted to ask you, because when you said that you don't go to theater because of this, my first, can I coach you?
Oh, golly, you want to coach me now? We're never going to get to the other emotions. That's only one aspect of envy, but sure, why not? I'm a player. Go ahead.
Maybe at least.
Oh no, someone's going to get on me for using that.
Maybe that's the this is an example of the fourth emotion, boredom.
Yeah.
Let's just move on. Let's go do something different.
Yeah, sure. Oh, you were getting bored, were you?
No, I was feeling, so
You want to help me?
yes, because so I'm a musician
Okay.
and, for years I had been saying that I was a musician in my former life. And I'm actively struggling to write music again. Like it's hard, but I'm engaging in it.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time where, like, right before I went back to grad school, I auditioned with this reggae band, and they got offered the gig, and I was going to go on tour with them. And I had this choice. I was like, do I do grad school, get that done, and then I have that, and then I can do my music and fall back on the lucrative profession of social work. Right.
Yeah.
And I chose to do school.
Mm-hmm.
And, here I am now almost 20 years later, wondering what happened with my music.
Oh, see, we all seem to have those moments, the road not taken moments. And yet, to me, what I've realized and why I'm at peace, and we all have our triggers. So I just know what I don't want to do is life's cumulative. Life is cumulative. Everything, no matter what choice you make, it's preparing you to become who you are. I just wanted to say about envy, it's about the antidote to envy is enoughness, being enough, feeling like you're enough. And so for me, I still get to, acting is behaving in really living through an imaginary circumstance and getting out of your, being authentic in an imaginary circumstance. Well, the circumstance doesn't have to be imaginary. And I'm actually scratching my acting Jones right now, talking to you. Because somebody is going to hear this and listen to it and hopefully be moved by us. So there's no bitterness. I want to make that clear.
Thinking about you as someone who loved the theater and now has resistance or apprehension to go enjoy the theater. Based on everything you've shared that you've been through, I'm wondering if you're not giving yourself enough credit for you might actually enjoy it and it might not be as hard as you are anticipating it being.
It's possible.
Because you did just say it's when you go to support a friend that it's,
That gets me to go. If I'm going to support a friend. But you know what? Also, it's just not that interesting to me because I have other things I'm doing.
Okay. So it's no longer the biggest piece of the pie that's catching your attention.
No, if I were going to theater, that would be like, that's where my time is going. And
is there part of you that feels if you go there, you're going to want to get fully immersed again?
Maybe. And the fact is, I don't want to treat it like a hobby. So that's possible, I suppose. I don't know. But I don't want to, personally, I still act by invitation. Once in a while, I will get called up to do a reading or something, and I have a ball. But do I feel this pull to go do community theater with a bunch of people with no training? No. Sorry. I know how to play. I want to play with people who make me play a better game. And those, that's my relationship with it right now. And actually, I don't know if you know about human design, but I'm a projector.
Okay.
And the whole thing about being a projector in human design is wait for the invitation.
Okay. So this is an idea I'm not super familiar with. So I'm
look
intrigued.
up human design. It's fascinating. I was never good at auditioning because that's about proving something and busting in. But really, if I get invited, I feel safe. I have to know I'm wanted, I guess. So we could get into my whole psychology here, but I don't know if that's where we want to go. However, I still enjoy acting when I'm invited from time to time.
Okay. No, I was just kind of struck by the I don't even know what to call it, but like this history in the theater. You're clearly a very, theatrical person, very expressive, very...
Yeah, I've been called eccentric.
Yeah.
But I like that.
But in a beautiful way.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
But it made me the coach I am. That's what I mean. Life is cumulative, and all my theater experience, all of it was transferable because basically as an actor, you have to know how to listen, and you have to really love stories. And as a playwright, which I am as well, You have to enjoy other people's stories and help them craft the narrative that they want to live into.
You know, it sounds
So
like you
acting is really, hits a lot of the
it sounds
marks
like you
for
have
me.
the stuff to be a potentially a good podcast host too, because what you just described is, being a good listener, really enjoying helping other people tell their story.
Well, I want to talk to you about how it's been where, I was Radio Rahti for years before podcasting was quite as hot as it was. And I stopped doing it because I couldn't figure out the ROI for my coaching business. So I just decided to be a guest, right?
That works too. I actually know people who do, like, they have gotten on, 100 podcasts and they don't podcast themselves. They're like, why? They let the host do all the work.
Let somebody else do the work. Hell yeah. Thank you, by the way. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it deeply.
Okay, let's do this. I'm just looking at the time. I want to take a quick break. And then when we come back, let's tackle those other emotions.
The other ones.
Like boredom.
Oh, absolutely.
I hope that our listeners haven't hit that one yet with this conversation.
Oh, me too. Okay.
We will be right back. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from our Patreon community at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. I want to welcome Cynthia B., who joined us this week on Patreon and became a $25 a month supporter. Thank you so much for your support. When you support us on Patreon at $5 a month or more, you can get ad-free episodes of the show. Then at $25 a month, you can join me for our coaching call that happens every fourth Tuesday of the month. But since the holidays are coming up, we will be taking a month off in December, which means our next patron-only coaching call will be on Tuesday, January 27th at 3 p.m. Central. That's Tuesday, January 27th at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 Eastern. Patrons at $10 a month can get the audio recording of our coaching calls every month in our patron-only podcast feed. We really want to thank all of our patrons for supporting us. We get to do what we do in a huge part because of your support. So from the bottom of our hearts, thank you. If you want to support our work and get extra perks, then consider joining our Patreon community, starting at just $5 a month to get ad-free episodes of this show by going to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. And support can start at any amount that makes sense to you, and you can sign up for a full year, and you get about a month free based on whatever level you sign up for. To become a patron, go to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon, or just click the Patreon tab at the top of the page. That's ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. And thanks. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from our listeners, which means if you're listening to this right now, thank you. If you learn something new every week and discover new tools to help your ADHD management, then consider subscribing so you don't miss out on the different topics we cover every week. You can hit follow or subscribe in your favorite podcast player, or go to ADHDrewired.com/podcast, where you'll also find the show notes and links to all the resources mentioned in this episode and every episode. Next week, you'll be able to hear the recording of our live Q&A that we did in November, where we answered questions from listeners about accepting our ADHD, comparing our progress, protecting our sleep, and more. Which means when you go to ADHDrewired.com/podcast network, you'll find the rest of the ADHD Rewired podcast family, including ADHD Essentials with Brenda Mahan, Hacking Your ADHD with Will Curb, ADHD Diversified with MJ Siemens. If you go to ADHDrewired.com/events, or just click the events tab on our website, you can join us for our monthly live Q&A with me, our podcast host, and ADHD Rewired coaches. We do that every second Tuesday of the month. And since I mentioned our coaches, Kat Hoyer and Krista Martz, they're making more progress on their shows that will be launching soon on the network. Thank you again to all of our listeners who tune in every week for all of your feedback, your questions, your ratings and reviews. We appreciate all of you. Find everything from show notes to events and everything ADHD Rewired by going to ADHDrewired.com. That's ADHDrewired.com. And thanks for listening. All right, we are back. Let's get into it. Boredom.
Boredom, baby.
Boredom. Whenever I talk about boredom with ADHD, I'm like, it's capital B boredom. It is synonymous with pain. Like it is like jumping out of your skin. Like it is I feel it in my bones. Boredom.
Yes, it's like a physical pain almost. And even worse, what's pernicious about boredom, in my opinion, is it breeds a loss of meaning. You start to disbelieve the meaningfulness of your endeavor. I am so fucking bored. What makes me think anybody else is going to be interested in it? I can't, when you get to that point in developing a piece of work or whatever, I'm just going to quit. And a lot of the creatives I coach with ADHD, it's not just the pain of boredom when they curtail the distraction so they can focus on their work. They're confronted by meaning making.
Well, something that I've said for many, many years is that as people with ADHD, we don't have the luxury to not love what we're doing and have a deep, strong connection and a real clear why. Because as soon as we don't have a strong connection to the why, and as soon as there's no meaning or interest in it, it's a recipe for disaster. Because we will create other ways to stimulate our brain, and they are usually ways that have more significant life consequences.
So the challenge is getting back to that why, in terms of completion. The challenge with boredom is reigniting why it matters and I call it, is to become, to be in the work, come back to the work and find something in it that you can obsess about a little bit. Maybe you need to bring somebody in on it so that you can just talk about the work. I don't know. But I don't know that boredom has to be the death knell of a project necessarily because you have ADHD.
Rahti, what about this idea of, boredom is the birthplace of creativity?
There's that too, sure. And if you don't let yourself go to the distractions.
Right. And it's interesting. Like I've been noticing myself recently that, because I feel like when I was younger, I had no problems being bored and just kind of, I feel like as I've gotten older, it is like this unreachable itch, like when I'm feeling that boredom.
Interesting, because usually I think with a lot of people, it's the opposite. You actually get more comfortable with boredom as you get older, but you've gotten less comfortable with it, it sounds like.
I feel like I used to be like a professional, like chillaxer. Like I could just veg and chill, have no plan, and just enjoy myself. And now it's like when I'm doing that, I'm like, okay, there's probably something I'm supposed to be doing right now.
I know that one. Oh, I get that one. Yeah, you have to plan to do nothing.
Yeah, it's kind of true. Because otherwise, if you do nothing and you say, all right, that's fine. If you don't go into that with some intentionality.
That's right.
That feeling of, I'm screwing something up right now.
Exactly. Right. Planning to do nothing is giving yourself permission in advance.
I've been talking with my son a lot about boredom. My son who has ADHD and is on the autism spectrum and is highly gifted and it's got a fantastic brain, right? But his tolerance for boredom is like nil. Like we're going to play like a video game together and I'm like, I'm just going to grab a drink from the kitchen, like back in 30 seconds. And he's already opened up his other iPad and watching a YouTube video. I'm like, dude, come on. We just wait. Like, you don't need to occupy and stimulate your brain every second. And it's funny because I find myself getting frustrated because I see myself in it. And I'm just like, it's like, buddy. Yeah. Sorry. That's.
I have my son too. He's a man now. And so, that ship has sailed. All I can do is hold space for him, because he doesn't want my advice. But he doesn't go anywhere without the phone in his hand. Anywhere.
Yeah.
Anywhere.
I'm the same way. Like at nighttime, I'll plug in my phone at my nightstand and then I go brush my teeth. And I'm literally walking towards the bathroom to brush my teeth. And I'm like, oh no, I need to actually have my phone in hand. And I'm like watching myself do this. And I'm like, what the hell am I doing? I could be without my phone for 3 minutes. And it's like, but I know.
Don't. I watched my son going into the bathroom in the middle of the night, and there's the phone, and his face is in it.
Oh man, I don't do that in the middle of the night because I try to not open my eyes if I do need to get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, just because of the light.
But it's very discomforting.
Yeah.
I don't know where that is leading. Really? But again, I think if you want to allow boredom to generate some creativity, you have to have a little pain tolerance and a little frustration tolerance.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It is. And it's always amazing because when I occasionally will do in my house screen-free Sundays.
Wow.
And, it's like for my son, it is always like, initially it's always hard for him. And then he gets into this amazing creative stuff.
I love
and
it. Wow.
And he likes it too.
I wish I'd done that growing up. I mean, I did stuff with him, but we never, once that took over, did screen free like that. And I think it would have been a good thing.
And it's so funny too, because he's been the one that has actually like suggested this. Now he'll suggest it on a Saturday. And then when the Sunday comes, he's like, this was the worst idea. I don't know why I thought of this.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking about the 5 emotions that stop success. You said shame, grandiosity. You said envy,
boredom,
and
fear. Yeah.
Let's talk about fear.
Well, we are afraid. I mean, fear keeps us alive. Just, I think, in terms of just evolution, fear has kept us alive as a species. However, we are evolving.
It is a very, very strong motivator.
But it is a strong motivator.
From a neurological perspective, it is a very strong
fear of being shamed keeps people invisible. It keeps perfectionists from taking chances creatively, right? The fear of looking bad. The fear of, being rejected, right? All that comes with that. It really, to me, the biggest problem with fear outside of just primal not wanting to die and be killed is the fear of having those other emotions almost guarantees them because it is so debilitating.
I find when addressing fear that it's really helpful to kind of sort of really play out all the what if scenarios. Because I think what happens is the language of fear is what if.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
And what often people do is they'll ask that what if this happens? And then they just sit in that anxiety and don't even consider actually answering that, right? Because often if we answer that and then keep doing that, well, okay, so, what if I got fired? Okay, well, what if I got fired?
Oh, yeah, right. Go there.
Okay, right. It's like, okay, well, so what would we do? Like, would it suck for a little while? Sure. But could you handle it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you probably could.
It's very freeing to really follow the what if thread. Yeah.
And speaking it out loud, I think sometimes too, that's, I think that connection between fear and shame, right? Because I think fear is also it's sort of the anthem of the itty bitty shitty committee, right? Our internal thought process that's just like, oh, you don't want to do that because, they're right. And all those things. And when we start to say those things out loud, it sort of highlights sometimes the absurdity of some of our internal thoughts.
And that alone is worth the price of coaching, in my opinion. Doing that, having the opportunity to hear yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of my members will say that when they watch the recordings of our coaching sessions, they learn a lot about themselves, like seeing themselves and hearing themselves, what they've said during those sessions. But I think that when we speak fear, then the shame piece can't survive.
The fear is also, I think, a cue because fear, on one hand, is telling you to not do something. And it's almost a cue for me to go do it, to lean in. And getting back to going to the theater, I dread it. And then I lean into it and I never regret it. I'm always, or a networking event. After COVID, I didn't want to leave this apartment. My husband literally walks me. I mean, he takes me out of the house because otherwise, but I was like, I gotta get out there, network and meet some real other people. And God, the fear. But I knew that if I did it, it was going to give me the material I needed for my chapter on fear. Actually, I didn't know that. That was the serendipity that arose. Going to that networking event caused me to meet a young man I found really inspiring. And we had this conversation that ended up in the book. So, leaning into the fear is where it's at.
There's 2 acronyms for fear that I like. I don't know if you've heard these. The first is false evidence appearing real.
Yes, I love that.
And then forget everything and run.
Forget everything and run.
Right?
Yeah.
As I said earlier, these emotions, they are convincing liars.
Oh, aren't they? Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
And when we obey those emotions, we are also reinforcing our brain to keep churning out those emotions because it thinks it's actually doing a good job because you're listening to it.
Yeah, and you're not actually pushing past the costume. The emotion is drag for some belief and some underlying thought that's not productive. So when you succumb to it rather than question it, you're staying small. You're not finding. There's so much to discover behind the curtain of those emotions. And you lose that if you miss out, if you just give in to them.
It's kind of the idea of coaching, right? Question everything. Question everything. We love questions here. That's, we really encourage people like, all right, so you like giving advice because you like to be helpful? Well, put advice given to the very bottom of your list of ways to be helpful, right? Ask questions.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. There's nothing more helpful, actually.
I love that moment when someone asks a really pointed, powerful, perspective shifting question that just makes you kind of lean back in your chair and go, oh shit. Like that's like whether it's in therapy or coaching, like I love those moments because if you're just throwing out ideas, it doesn't give you that chance to really think.
Yeah. And it's funny. Do you notice? I don't know if you notice this. I find that certain clients, it's just something about their presence, but they evoke the right questions. I find I'm able to ask better questions with certain clients and then just lean back and they really run with it. And I think that's what makes someone highly coachable is they are fascinated explorers.
Yeah. Ooh, I like that phrasing, fascinated explorers.
Yes, and they just need to be shown, well, come over. Let's see what's behind here.
Because it is the process of discovery and being open to lots of different discoveries that you didn't anticipate. I think that it's this weird, like, almost a paradox when when we're open to discovery, but we hope to discover something specific.
Yeah.
Where it's like, wait a minute. It's like, let's actually let the story unfold organically versus trying to carve this thing out.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know about you. When I'm working with my groups, one of the coolest things that I find is when people had a clear idea of what they wanted to work on coming into the group. And then somewhere about the halfway point, they realized that, now based on what we have discussed in group and the conversations and exercises we've been doing, they kind of have this whole perspective shift that they realize, oh wait, that's what I thought I needed to be working on.
Right.
I now realize this is what I need to be working on. Like,
that's
to
amazing.
Me, I love that. That's when we get to the sort of that core of the onion. We keep back,
well, it takes courage to let go and not try to jam things into a specific result, and that just what they thought they wanted was the catalyst to get them into the exploration. And it takes a certain maturity to be able to even admit at that point, you know what? I thought I was coming here for this, but what I really need to work on is that.
I think that if for listeners, if there's something that you're feeling unsettled by, if there's maybe you can't put your finger on it, explore coaching or explore therapy. Like it is magical when you get that right therapist or coach to work with. And it's hard. And it's supposed to be hard.
It's supposed to be hard.
It is supposed to be hard. Right? Rahti, let's wrap this one up. Okay. Creativecallingcoaching.com is your website. Well, you mentioned your book.
That's right.
What's the name of your book?
Oh, man, it's a mouthful. It is the 5 emotions that stop success in coaches, their clients, and creatives. Overcoming personal obstacles of the mind.
So the title...
I just call it the 5 emotions that stop success, but Rutledge has to cram every keyword into the title that they possibly can.
So they say the title of your book is a thesis.
Yes. But it's the 5 emotions that stop success. I think you'll be able to pull it up on Amazon once it's published. Just putting that in there.
Do you know when it's going to be out?
I'm finally doing the hard work, and I will tell you, this is where being neurodivergent and knowing you need help is really paying off. I'm having someone do it with me and for me because they want everything submitted in a very particular way. The book is done, but it has to be submitted with all kinds of assets and permissions and APA formatting of referencing. Forget it, man. I just hired somebody.
Smart.
Sometimes just... So I'm imagining it's going to be like, I'm hoping like summer 23, fall 23, it should be coming out.
Excellent. Well, we should look out for that. Is there going to be an audiobook?
Maybe I'll even do it.
I think it would be a pleasure to listen to.
Oh, I would love to do an audiobook. We'll see. I know it's going to be available in every other way, so why not?
Rahti Gorfien. I think I got it right that time. I think I messed it up when I just previously said it. Any final thoughts?
Final thoughts, I guess, like you said, I think the exploration is the destination, ultimately. Be open to surprising yourself. I think that's the final thought, and it's what you were saying. Be open to surprising yourself.
That's a good note to end on. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening, and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is ADHDrewired.com. You can find time-stamped summaries and additional resources for each episode. Apply to join our free and secret Facebook community. Learn more about our award-winning intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. Join the Adult Study Hall virtual co-working membership community. Find all the other podcasts on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network. Sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content that you won't hear anywhere else. And use the search tool to find episodes on specific topics. You can do all of this at ADHDrewired.com. While you're there, click on the Patreon button. If you are a regular listener, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to you, the listener, but it's not free to produce. Plus, patrons get cool perks like ad-free episodes and access to recordings of coaching calls, and $25 a month patrons can join me once a month for a group coaching call. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHD Rewired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. Subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube to see selective interviews and other videos I've made. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends, family, your therapists, your coaches, doctors, siblings, parents. And if you, your coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at the website, ADHDrewired.com. If you are a member of CHAD, ADA, or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this show and all of the shows on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. And if you really loved this particular episode, please hit share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I do count on you to help spread this message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other app that supports reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at Audible by going to audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Here is my list of must-listen-to audiobooks updated July 2021. Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Attached by Amir Levin and Rachel Heller. Atomic Habits by James Clear. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. Crucial Conversations by Carrie Patterson. The Coaching Habit by Michael Stainer. The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Rest by Alex Sujong Kim Pang. The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins. Make It Stick. The Science of Successful Learning by Peter Brown. The Productivity Project by Chris Bailey. Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions, Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. I always recommend to my coaches and admin that they read that book. The One Thing by Gary Keller, a required reading for all of our coaching group members. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Baden. The 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. And if you're looking for something a little bit more magical, I have fallen in love with the Harry Potter series, and the narrator, Jim Dale, is amazing. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brene Brown bus, all of her stuff is great. starting with Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, and the Power of Vulnerability. And if you're an entrepreneur or leader, be sure to check out her book, Dare to Lead. Do you have something that you would like to share? Click on the podcast tab at ADHD Rewired. Click the button to be a guest at the top of the page and schedule a 15-minute interview. This is Eric Tivers, reminding you to keep learning, growing, and connecting. Self-care is not selfish. No matter what you get done or don't get done, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, we can do hard things. And we don't need to do them in the hardest way possible. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.